Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the second sip with Dave Hawkins. I'm back again for another episode and deep dive into a whole bunch of interesting tech topics. If you are interested in game, I'm looking forward to having a chat with you today. There'll be, as a matter of fact, let me grab my link for the show and publish it over on LinkedIn again for another quick episode and deep dive into a whole bunch of interesting tech topics. If you are interested in game, I'm looking forward to having a chat with you today. Okay. There'll be, hopefully we'll see some folks joining shortly on that front and publish it over on LinkedIn again for another quick episode. But good morning for those of you who are interesting tech topics. I'm going to continue looking forward to having a chat with you today. Okay. Grab a few things. There'll be hopefully see some folks joining, mainly getting my chats up so that I can publish it. See you guys again when you another give me a quick. But good morning for those of you who are interested in tech topics. All right, chats are over. I'm going to continue looking forward to having a chat with you today. Okay. Grab a few things. There'll be hopefully team on board, folks joining, mainly getting my chats up so that I can publish it. See you guys. There's our sidebar chat. Give me a quick. But good morning for those of you who are interested in tech topics. All right, chats are over. There's the general chat with all the channels. Okay. And here's the locals chat. So if you're on locals and you want to say hi, getting my chats up here so that I can. I'll be looking on both of you guys, and we'll see. All right. Oh, no worries, Barry. Glad to hear that you're doing something fun and interesting today. So, but thank you for at least popping in and say hi for a second. That's really nice of you. I know when I actually had a dream last night that I was not going to be able to do the stream today because I had some other event taking me out of the picture. So maybe I was dreaming about you. Who knows? So, anyways, I have quite a few items for us to talk about today, and I'm going to go into some different topics than I usually do. I have a little bit of a book intro today. Farzad just dropped this book today, and I'm going to do a little bit of a kind of overview about it, but I haven't read it yet, so it's not really a ready for prime time discussion. But I'm going to give him, I want to just cover a couple things on it. AI gives us these wonderful tools to allow us to dive into interesting points about any written body of text. So I'm going to take advantage of that and share what I can with you today. So anyways, let's hop right in. And yeah, definitely. I've got a regular, no, I won't miss the streams, generally speaking. And I do like a routine. Routines actually, I believe they lead to positive health. So let's take a look at a couple of these interesting things. I saw this morning and I thought it was just cool as heck. And guess what? It's not AI. That's what's cool about this. It's actually a mechanical device that through its rotation gives you an optical illusion that it's, like a Mobius strip that's continuously looping. And I would love to make one of these at some point. It would just be cool because I don't have a CNC machine yet. But, at some point in the future, maybe if I get a really wonderful revenue day off of YouTube, I'll go buy a CNC machine so I can make one of these. But in the meantime, I'm not living on that kind of a budget. So, and just taking a quick peek. Just taking a quick peek at the X area just for fun. I also wanted to talk about this one here, and this is an interesting, for those of you who are Scott Adams fans, I don't know if you've ever seen this, and I know I'm sorry it's so dark, but it is a dark picture. kind of a dark picture. But that's Scott Adams. He appeared in for those of you who know, I mean, all of you probably know, but there are going to be viewers watching this later that may not actually be, Scott Adams followers or fans, and may not know who the heck that is. But Scott Adams wrote the comic strip Dilbert, and this is somewhere probably mid-career for him, early to mid-career for him on his comic strip. So this is after he got fired, whatever, laid off, or decided to leave his banking jobs and his MCI phone company job, where he was part of Bell Labs or something like that. I don't know if it was MCI or Bell Labs, but this part was, and when he was actually out there trying to do some other creative things, because he got his comic strip going, and that was starting to become pretty popular. And he had this one cameo scene in Babylon 5. And he's in a couple of other things too. I guess he was in a couple of commercials, and he looking exactly like this. So early Scott Adams. So, and let's take that as our cue to say, if you want to join in what we would call the simultaneous sip, and I've kind of decided, nobody's really saying I shouldn't, so I'm just going to go ahead and not waiting for permission to do the Scott Adams toast, which is to have a little good morning ceremony, a routine. So if you happen to have a cup handy, all you need is a cup or a mug or a glass, a tankard, chalice or a stein, a canteen jug or a flask, a vessel of any kind. Fill it with your favorite liquid. I like coffee. And join me now for the unparalleled pleasure, the dopamine hit of the day, the thing that makes everything better, the simultaneous sip. It happens now. Go. So, and again, great coffee, because I love coffee, right? Everybody, if you don't love coffee, coming to a show called The Second Sip, you can put whatever you want in your mug. It's not my business. Not going to tell you what to do, right? So, anyways, just putting it out there. But yeah, I love Scott Adams. I mean, he's been a profound impact on my life, and actually one of the motivators for why I do this show. So Scott was one of those people that inspired me to just get off my butt and do. I like the talk show kind of thing, and helping people with just getting into the daily routine. So I was inspired by him, and as a result, I've done what I can to keep that alive and kicking and moving forward. So that was one of the first things I wanted to do when I heard that he passed away. So that was literally he passed away on Wednesday. It's actually a month yesterday, maybe a day or so off. It's been a month, and basically he passed away on January 13th. Today's February 14th. So, maybe a month and a day since he passed away. And it was the Saturday after he passed away that I decided to start this stream. And, it's really weird, but I've always had this, I've had incidents in my life that always seem to happen on Friday the 13th, which is weird. And it wasn't a Friday, it was a Wednesday when he passed away. Yesterday being Friday the 13th kind of commemorates that. But the thing that started my military career, I enlisted. I stood in front of a flag with a few officers standing in front of me and a bunch of soldiers or candidate soldiers behind me, and put my hand up and swore an oath of allegiance to this country and to the Constitution of the United States on November 13th, 1985. And that was my day of swearing in to become a soldier. And I had a similar day on my second enlistment in the military when I came back in. And it so happened that the day that I did it again was a Friday the 13th. Just weird, just one of those funny things. But I like kind of remembering those moments in my life, and that they happened on a Friday the 13th. Yesterday, I actually spent some time with some vets and had some interesting discussion about everything and what was going on as a result. So it was kind of commemorative again. So just that all happened after my show yesterday. So I didn't get I would have brought it up then, because it was, to me, it was a significant day yesterday. It had a positive day for me for whatever reason. So I hope today is a positive day for you, the same way yesterday was for me. As much as there's a sadness around Scott Adams passing, the one door closes and another opens. And we have people like Owen Gregorian stepping up and putting on his show over here, which if you haven't seen it, if you haven't attended one, I highly encourage it. I think it may be off the air now, but he does a show called The After Party, and that's on Saturday mornings. And all of the people who loved the Scott Adams show go on that, and they listen and join in and have a conversation. It's much more of a conversation than what I'm doing. I'm doing kind of a show, but I absolutely love joining when I can. Only problem for me is if I don't do my pre-work ahead of time and get all my ducks in a row, I listen to that show, get my head all twisted around what they're talking about, and then I come on here and I'm like, blah, blah, can't talk. I've experienced that twice now and realized I can't really listen to his entire show, because if I do, I'll get wrapped around the axle around the stuff they're talking about on that show, and then I won't be able to cover what I'm going to talk about on my show. So what I do now is I hop off of his show about 10 minutes before my show starts so that I can refresh myself on all my content. That way I'm not, just over here tongue-tied and not able to talk. But I have a few memes for you, because that is my tradition, to bring up a few memes when possible. And rather than putting them in a full browser, I'm going to put them over here. And let's see, right here. There we go. Now we can bring it in. So this one was like, God had to be watching on this one, right? Look at that. I mean, that was like pure luck. I mean, every single person in every one of those cars probably just had a heart attack, right? I mean, it was one of those, yeah. and then here again, another one. I want to go ahead and I keep clicking on the wrong button on this. Let's go over and take a look at it this way. Poof. So this one, I just thought this was hilarious. Have you ever done this with a hose or with a gas pump? Like you're getting every drop. This dude's charging his electric car. I mean, if that's not a meme of the day, that has to be like the funniest thing. Who knows? It's probably staged, but still funny. Now, I posted on LinkedIn today with this stream so that, anybody who's interested and feels like joining from over there might just join. And, if you guys do, great. But I thought I'd poke fun at LinkedIn a little bit too. So you look at this. My dog says, I had a panic attack and howled until my parents came back home. And then it's the same exact post on LinkedIn. I demonstrated a deep commitment to the team retention and workplace attainment, proactively escalating concerns during periods of unexpected leadership absence. Yeah. So if you did join from LinkedIn, I'm not trying to make fun of you, but I'm making fun of LinkedIn and how we all post when we get over there on LinkedIn. Now this one, I did like this. I thought this was kind of cute. This is sort of like kind of a cute meme. If it's like a vegan that secretly loves to eat meat. Somebody with a generator in a trailer charging up their BMW, And I've had an electric car for over 7 years now. And, I had a Hyundai, the first one, and then a Tesla on the second one. And I'll never go back. They're just phenomenal cars. And I'm not talking about the gas versus electric debate. That's nothing like it. It's the unbridled acceleration. You never smell gas. I'm sorry. I don't like the smell of gas, and never had to. If you've ever been in New England and you've had to pump gas at the gas station in the freezing cold and your hands are already cold and you don't happen to have gloves on, that sucks. And then the other one is getting gas on your hands and getting back in a car and getting it on your steering wheel. It happens, but I hate it. So I'm fortunate to have a garage. And I know that not everybody has a garage. Not everybody has a place to charge at home. But if you have a place to charge at home, you do like my experience. I park my car in my garage. I plug the silly thing in. And the next morning, I'm topped off and ready to go wherever I need to go. And I don't have any issues. I don't have any range anxiety. I've hopped in my car and gone hundreds of miles out of the box. Never even think twice. And if I need to stop off for a charge, I can stop off for a 5 or 10 minute charge. I don't even think about it. It's nothing. So yeah, it's pretty cool. And a little bit more of a meme. This one was just cute. Sorry. This dog. I mean, going for the belly dancer. It's awesome. I mean, it could be AI. I don't know, but it's kind of cute. And on to some more interesting and serious topics here. So this is and I'm going to bring over a browser tab here so that we can actually look at this more directly, because it'll open the browser tab here instead. If I just do this, there we go. So now you can see it a lot better. So what's cool about this is, I've got a couple of 3D printers myself, and I'm going into, I'm probably going to have a 3D print farm sometime this year. One of the things about me as like a creator or a person that does like anything, even when I was working in a corporate environment, in the beginning, I used to get massive anxiety trying to learn new products. I was working for companies like Symantec and RSA Security, and these big companies that have thousands of products or hundreds of products. When I was at RSA Security, we had a product stack of 30 products. I wasn't a pre-sales engineer there, but I had to support answering questionnaires about every single one of those in an RFP kind of format. And in that instance, I had to learn a lot about every single product. Now, when you have the option to just sit back and look it up and, do a search and read up on it, and nobody's in your face about it, no big deal. When you get into a company like Symantec and you're face to face with a customer and you're pitching a product and you become, in my role then, it was a pre-sales engineer, you have to be sort of an expert. And I'm gonna show you kind of one of my techniques that I built and developed about how to do that, to become sort of an expert on just about everything. They had some like 60 products, maybe, 20 product categories. I even experienced this at Computer Associates when I worked for the eTrust group. Same exact scenario. Lots of products. You had to be what I called ankle deep to knee deep in all the products so that you weren't like an idiot. But, so anyways, the whole point is I'm developing now 2 brand new skill sets that I didn't have before. One is to do these streams. And, when I started, if you go back and look at my first stream versus today, there's a big difference. And I know it. I know that my production quality has gone way up. I don't expect it to be, reputed as like the most amazing techniques. I still want to get the ability to have, no flicker on all of my transparencies and things like that. I'm getting there. But it's one of those things where you develop a skill set and then you start practicing that skill set. This particular skill set I've been practicing real time since, January 16th, 15th? 29 episodes now of this show. And so I developed that skill set and said, yeah, this is what I'm going to do. I mean, I'm not retired, but I'm not actively, like, I'm consulting, and I'm doing AI consulting engagements for a couple of companies. So, and by the way, if you have any knowledge of folks that need help with that, either low-level early AI training so that people can understand more about how AI works and how to prompt and how to get results out of AI that they're looking for, how to data cleanse before you start using AI when you have your own on-premise libraries and things like that. And I'm moving into, in the next year, probably the next couple months, having an OpenClaw, or what some would know as ClaudeBot or MoltBot, autonomous agents. So I'll be doing that kind of work in the background in the near future to just develop the skills. And I'm not doing it because I'm not desperate for, like, trying to find a job or anything like that. I'm doing this. This is literally what this stream is, all that I'm doing right now as a means of income, and I'm not making any money today. And that's okay. I'm not worried about it. I've got some time before that becomes a crunch. But I'm looking at a couple of different avenues of areas of interest. And I decided this year to focus on the streaming part. And what I was getting at before is when I was working for these big corporations is I used to get panicked about not knowing enough right away. And then I started to learn you don't have to panic over that. You can just pick one thing, learn that skill, give yourself 30, 60, 90 days to develop that skill, and then go on to the next one and go on to the next one and keep doing it. And what I've figured out is that, I can reach a significant level of mastery within a 6-month window to a degree that I will be, more than proficient, but actually something of an expert on whatever that topic is within a 6-month period based on the way that I dive in and study. So, like I said, first thing this year is the streaming and developing this channel and building out what I produce here. The second one is 3D printing. And because I bought these 3D printers, I actually bought my first 3D printer because I wanted to prototype a hydroponics product. And I'm still doing that. I've actually got 2 prototype models downstairs that I'm just fiddling around with. And the problem I've discovered almost immediately with 3D printing is if you don't have the quality you see in this image over here, everything leaks. So that sucks, right? You buy something for the very purpose of prototyping, and it's supposed to help you develop some product, a real world product. And then you figure out that the method that you're hoping to use is out of the box leaky, and the only way to get not out of the box leaky, hey, good morning. So the only way to get not out of the box leaky is to go right into what they call injection molding. And the machines for that are like $30,000. So I'm not going there right now, not yet. But the machining and the capability for airflow versus water flow is actually really spot on. And that's what you're seeing in this print here. One of the things I thought about is when I do the 3D printing, I looked at all the data centers in my region that do racks for AI and things like that. And I thought, yeah, I would love to print accessories for those companies because that's just like an area of opportunity. So that's one of the things that I'm going to develop later this year is, doing more 3D printing and looking for things like this, airflow handlers for rack mounted systems and whatnot in data centers. So that was just, an interesting topic that, I thought it was kind of cool to dig into. Going a little deeper though on 3D printing, so this is kind of interesting because here on Earth, one of the problems we have and one of the reasons for those leak issues with 3D printing is that the printing material doesn't bond as well as it could in ambient air. And so what they discovered is that they could get much better tightness in the printing material, which might be waterproof, airtight, whatever, in different atmospheres. And what's really interesting is apparently when they start printing on Mars, it may be very possible for things like habitats to be built on Mars that are more airtight or watertight out of the box, because the actual atmosphere doesn't insert air into, like little air bubbles when the plastic is laid down, or the material, whatever it is, cement, whatever, metal. When that's laid down, you don't get any ambient air bubbles or molecules or tiny little dust mites or whatever printed in. So apparently, printing habs on Mars could very likely become just out of the box practical. And then here's another topic that I was very interested in, especially around the 3D printing topic today, which is just saying this is printing 3D models, right? 3D models for drones. One of the key things that we don't have here in the US as a manufacturing hub are drones. So if you are a 3D printer, have an interest in 3D printing, you could get into printing drone bodies like this for hobbyists, for industrial, for military. You could be doing this to build up that capability here in the United States. So it's just something. It's kind of like one of those, gee, that would be a cool idea. And one of the things I'm discovering, I don't have a storefront yet per se for the 3D printing side of the world, but looking for it. Yeah, it's a good idea. Let's have another little quick sip for those of you who are just joining or whatever. Grab your coffee and take a sip. It's always good to lubricate the voice before going too far in the show. So, the idea, though, is these are devices that you can print on a 3D printer that are, they're not too complicated. They're not difficult. Building airframes to print, even if you just did it for fun, you could sell these things at a swap meet or a hobbyist kind of event, and just little fun things you could do. But this is, I'm talking to the folks who would be most interested or find it interesting to do 3D printing. Now, there's some other really interesting applications for 3D printing, and this is one of them. This is the Navy, and they're testing a 3D printed uncrewed, well, it doesn't look uncrewed to me, surface vessel prototype, which I think is really just awesome. The printer must be monstrous, but whatever the case may be, and if it's not monstrous, it must have taken like hours and hours and hours with a Lego size kind of part getting assembled with lots of glue, I would assume. So, let's take a look at the next one here. Now, this one is kind of interesting because this is a little bit more about people needing help. So there are people who have what's called essential tremor, or they have Parkinson's, and they struggle with their hands shaking or jerking around, and they can't feed themselves, or they can't have fine motor control with the tips of their fingers. So a lot of people are 3D printing these tools to help them. And some of them might be as simple as cool pill cases. That's great. Lighting systems, that's whatever, that's just little lamps. They're cute. But this, I actually watched one of these things where the guy created a robotic lever that the person would have strapped to their hand, and the lever actually had a spoon in it. And because the woman's hand was moving like this, she couldn't control the spoon to bring it up to her mouth to eat. So the robot, the little actuator that was in there, offset everything. So the spoon stayed perfectly level and she was able to feed herself, which the indignity of not being able to feed yourself after a lifetime of being able to do that, and not just that struggle, it's fantastic to know that things like this can actually help them. So, and that's what I'm bringing these things up, because to me, they're hopeful, they're useful, and they're hopeful, and things that when you think about all of the chaos and all of the terrible things that are happening in the world, these are things that are making the world better. And I just love to know that. And then here's another one. This is similar to the last one. So this guy apparently waited 27 years to actually have a surgeon 3D print a custom elbow joint and implant it. So now he actually has a work. It may not look exactly the way we would all think is appropriate, but just imagine he had no elbow for whatever reason prior to this. Now he's got the functionality that allows him to operate and live a more normal life. So that is extraordinarily hopeful. And I just, that inspires the heck out of me. And it's one of the reasons why I promote 3D printing in so many things that I talk about, because it's just fantastic. We can't afford to ignore this industry. It's not just a bunch of little cute tchotchkes that people print. There's real world applications that are profound. Here's another one. This is a real world application of sensors for nanotechnology. Quantum sensors. These things are so small. This is microscopic. You can't see this with the naked eye, but they actually can sense like molecules drifting into the zone of wherever these sensors are, and could be potentially used inside your body to detect foreign particles in your bloodstream, or being used from a physics perspective to be able to detect particles coming from outer space that are high energy particles, things like that. For scientific purposes, these things are just incredible. And the reason that is a big deal, again, we're talking about going into the quantum computing era in the not too distant future. We think AI is fantastic, and it is. But you think about the chips, the big blocky chips that we have to build in order to do this. When we get to the point where quantum computing comes into play, one quantum computer chip will replace like racks and racks of existing NVIDIA chips or any of the chips that are on the market today. AI will grow exponentially more powerful as a result. So for where we are today, this going into knowing quantum sensors are absolutely going to become part of quantum computing, because it's going to analyze the state of the quantum bits that are being used to calculate. So this is it doesn't seem like much, but it's a profound technology. So it's worth keeping an eye on, because it is kind of in the direction of where things are going. So worth knowing about. Now, another area that I came across this morning that I thought was pretty cool. This is bizarre and awesome, just absolutely awesome. So we already talked about the argon gas being improving 3D printing. This is 3D printing underwater. Now I'm going to mute it because I know you can probably hear that in the background. But these folks are creating machines that can actually print cement or some kind of heavy duty printing material underwater. Now, why is that a big deal? How about bridges? How about underwater habitats? How about coral reefs that we can actually expand, which will improve the biodiversity and fauna of our oceans, making them, maybe repairing them from some of the pollution that we put in our oceans. So this is absolutely another one of those things that is mind-blowing when you really think about the application for this. And recognizing that we could print things. I mean, printing a dam. I highly doubt it's going to be structurally capable of that yet, but just being able to maybe print the flow like funnels for dams. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but in the Hoover Dam and a lot of other dams, they have the, you see the big wall that the dam has. At the top, they have water relief valves that allow the water to run out. But they also have often further out away from the dam, because I think they're trying to avoid silt that'll deposit itself at the bottom of the dam and then rise. They put funnels out into the water further up and then put piping underneath the dam so that when the water gets high enough, it goes into those overflow funnels in case the dam is clogged. So these things could be used to print those funnels. I mean, the applications for this are just profound. They're awesome. And, you're not looking for the structural strength for those funnels that you do need for the dam. So entirely feasible. So yeah, just cool stuff. And then going another level was exoskeletons. Now, I personally have a funny enjoyment of the concept around exoskeletons because one of the games that I like to play, a video game, is called Mech Warrior. And it's all about running around, having your, an avatar of yourself running around in a giant stompy robot, right? And it's silly, but it's fun. And so this is actually a report and a kind of an update for the world on where things are at with human exoskeletons. So not so much, this is maybe a good picture to look at here. Not so much exoskeletons that are focused on, warfare, right? Those are probably out there and probably a big deal. But more, let's see if we can, I don't know if I can bring that up in the corner. No, I can't. I'll leave this one out. But the idea is this picture is showing a guy, he's standing on something that elevates him up a little bit, and it allows him to lift or be taller than objects that he's trying to lift so that he can do the task or the job of being a firefighter or whatever, whatever kind of worker is out there. So these, we've seen them in movies like Alien as far back as 1985, where they had that giant forklift that the main character fought the alien with. So they go back quite a ways, and it's quite a, it's a powerful thing to be able to. So I'm looking over on the chats real quick. Yeah, it is pretty wild how much it's printing. I don't think they're printing silicon. I was actually just watching something the other day about silicon, and one of the interesting reasons why the United States will remain central to silicon wafer production and the chips that are produced around the world is that we actually have a deposit of silicon here on the continental United States that is more pure than anywhere else on the planet. And because of that, we basically have a monopoly on the core piece of silicon. And silicon wafers are actually made by skimming out. They make this cylinder and they skim out the wafers off of it. They make like a ceramic cup, almost like this, right? So they make this ceramic cup and then they fill it with the molten silicon that they create. And then they have a device that slices. I'm not sure if it slices or pulls it off. I'm not sure what it does. But somehow, apparently, it slices off each disc that becomes the substrate for the silicon wafers that become our chips. And then they use lasers to imprint, I think. I'm not 100% sure of that. So that's why I don't think they're 3D printing silicon yet, because I don't think you can get the purity in the silicon wafer printing process. But, that thing we saw a minute ago up here at the quantum level, maybe. So we'll see. But here's going down the exoskeleton path a little bit more. Apparently this person wore an exoskeleton fanny pack, and it accelerated them or helped them hike they did a super long hike and had it made the hike really easy, apparently. So, it was a lot of uphill stuff that this person had to go on. And it was long distance, maybe. I think that they tell us in the beginning here. No, he's just walking around a lot. But whatever the case may be, I used to, being in the military, I used to hump around, as they called it, a rucksack. And you would have to walk, 20 miles, 30 miles, and do that at a pretty hefty clip. And finish your entire day of walking nonstop. And then when you got to the other end, you put the ruck down, you pull out your shovel, dig a foxhole, and then pop up your pup tent and go to sleep. And trust me, you were exhausted. By the time you got to popping up your pup tent, you were lucky if you just rolled yourself in a canvas bag and said, "I'm out." And I did that. And all of us did that at one point or another. It's like, yeah, we're not, there's too much trouble to. We all got to the point where we would use like ponchos and use bungee cords, and you just hook the bungee cords together, put your tent stakes up, and that was it. You just laid down, because actually putting up a pup tent, the old pup tents where you had to hammer in the stakes and clip everything together, it was like took way too long. So we just pop up these ponchos over us and slide right into your sleeping bag and call it a day. So yeah, but having something like this exoskeleton, knowing you're going to walk 30 miles in a day and carry an 80-pound rucksack in a process, that would really be useful. And I know that the military's either experimenting with it or actively using it now. So that's good to know. Good for them, Now this one here, I'm going to this is a pretty hardcore technical paper. I'm not going to go into it, but it really just had to do with creating and providing upper limb exoskeletons that allowed people to get use out of their arms. So if you were paralyzed in your arms or something like that, or you needed to add strength, you could actually have that. So it's the research and development that's going on is phenomenal on this stuff. Now let's take a look at this one. I will play it without audio because obviously we're going to get commercials, and it's okay if you don't mind the commercials, but we'll skip the ads. There we go. These are 3 different humanoid robots running and doing various other things. So it was. I only brought this up because I wanted to get a comparison, because there was a Moonshots, or maybe it was What Happened in Tech Today, by the same team as the Moonshots, Peter Diamandis. They were talking about Figure, which is, I think, I don't know if he's in here, but let's kind of, this is the engine and AI TI. So there was a funny thing. They talked about in Moonshots, like, what kind of advertisement, what are you thinking when you're trying to advertise your robot kickboxing? It's just like, is that really how you're going to sell your robot? Are people really going to want a kickboxing robot in their house? Oh, no, I don't think so. So yeah, they have a whole bunch of kickboxing going on. Great for them. And it's ironically T-800, which is the Terminator, right? So now here we have Tesla, and Tesla is way up there on hand actuators, capabilities around touch and being able to do complex tasks with the hand. But they also have a pretty good, I just want to get to, there it is, the running part. So they're showing their robot running, and it's fairly fluid. A lot more fluid than what we see in the Boston Dynamics robots. Not saying that Boston Dynamics are bad in any respect, because they also are really incredible. But the perspective of what the Optimus robot can do is pretty cool. And then you get to Figure, and Figure is really fluid. This is just, kind of beyond astounding. They're just, they're really, really doing great. And this is a super lightweight robot. How far they've come in 2 years developing this robot is pretty astounding. At one time, they were working with OpenAI and others for the AI part of what they do. And apparently, because they had, when you build something like that in-house, your own development is probably the best. And these folks, they were working with OpenAI, and it's like they had to keep explaining everything to the folks at OpenAI in order to get any kind of help. At which point they were like, why are we explaining it to somebody else? Let's just do it ourselves, So now they're doing their own AI completely, which means this is the absolute head-to-head best direct competitor to the Tesla Optimus robot. And I wish them both the best success. I want to see these things out there. At some point, I will say, you're going to ask yourself, do you want a T-800 or whatever the heck this is called? T-800, maybe as a soldier. I don't really want him as my house companion. I don't want him as my C-3PO. Would I want an Optimus robot as a C-3PO, knowing the intent behind what Elon has in mind and Tesla, their mission? I would say yes. And when you get out here to Figure, what they're focused on is, one of the backstories to the CEO of Figure that I was just impressed with was he talked about the fact that his parents were in assisted living. And in his mind, part of what he was looking at was how to take advantage of this robot, these developments, to see what was viable out there to help with home care, elderly, and things like that. So he's kind of got that built into the mission of his company. And I think that's phenomenal, because if I could have one of these helping both my parents right now, they're in their 80s. They're not falling over. They're not like in an assisted living, but it would be really nice if I could say, hey, I got one of these for you so that you can have meal prep in the home. And just think about this for a second. You've got your AI that you can put all your supplements, all your medications, and all the ingredients in your refrigerator and your cabinets into. And then you have a robot that can actually cook for you. And you can say, based on all of my supplements, all that I have available to eat, and all of my medical items, what would be the best thing to eat? What would be the best thing to prepare? And then the robot could prepare that. Think about that. That's just, it's awesome. It's profound. And so maybe I'm a little future oriented. Yes. Am I optimistic? Yes. When it comes to this stuff, I'm looking for the most hopeful adaptations to all of this stuff. So I'm definitely looking forward to seeing things like this actually happen. And this one, apparently, somebody made a comment that the Optimus 3 could potentially be confused as a human. I mean, probably not in this form factor, but if you put a silicon body around all of this robot, like they did in, I hate to bring it up, in Terminator, in the very beginning, you see Arnold Schwarzenegger embodied, but he's really a giant mechanical robot, right, underneath. So, I think that when the fluidity of all the movements, and you don't have, so that one robot that we were looking at, it had the weirdest hand position to open and close the dishwasher rack. You would see that in a robot and go, robot, right? Instantaneously. You'd be like, yep, that's not a real person. Nobody's hand does that. So if they build the robot as close to human as possible and provide a synthetic shell around it that looks human, it could pass for a Jarvis in your house. And I think that's kind of cool. Could it be scary? Absolutely. There's always the dark side to everything, right? But I like to focus on what are the potential positive outcomes. And I'm going to skip over a couple of these that I have because they're kind of repeats of the same They're not the same article, but they're sort of repeats of the same topic. Now, this one here, I want to hit on, especially if you happen to have joined from LinkedIn and you're in the cybersecurity industry, or if you watch this after having, coming in from LinkedIn, because this is a very interesting conversation that Forbes is having around agentic AI. Now, if you're up on AI, there's a couple of basic things that you need to know if you don't already know it. There's how to prompt an AI, which is a great skill to have. Understanding what a frontier lab is and a frontier model. Frontier labs are companies like Google, OpenAI, Gemini, Google, right? And then Grok and Anthropic, companies like that, where they have massive data centers or rent out massive data centers, and they build out the core models that become the models that downstream we use in smaller AI systems. So it's important to understand that, because that downstream model is what you end up using in agentic AI, and it's the backbone to your agentic AI. So for an agent to operate, it has to have a model to leverage. Now, this gets enormously expensive. So an agent with access to unlimited resources, so pointing to an API, an application program interface for things like OpenAI or Gemini or whatever from Google, they actually did this recently where the agents, a whole bunch of agents swarmed together for the purpose of building a C compiler, which is big in software programming. C is really important because that's actually the language that we typically use in hardware control for things like robots and whatever. So it created a C compiler from scratch. Normally, that's something that takes 5 or 10 years for a human company to build, and it's not cheap. This thing spent $20,000 worth of AI compute, but it did it in like a day or 3 days or maybe a month. I can't remember the date, the time frame, but it was fast and relatively speaking cheap, because $20,000 is nothing compared to 10 years of paying 10 or 20 developers to build that compiler. So, but the minute you start building things like that with an agent, you have to be able to identify the security holes, the security flaws, and all of the things that are out there. So we're going to see a lot more of these agents managing tasks and doing things that workers do ultimately. Now, how did we get here? And this is what I love about this article. That's why I brought it up and why I'm talking about it today. So in 2024, September, we had the agentic breakthrough, and AI started to be able to break out into these little agents that could start performing tasks. Then in October, they shifted a little bit and started talking about digital trust, because how do you, if you don't have a level of trust between two or more agents, you could insert a malicious action into an agent, propagate it into the whole picture, and now basically everything that they built, that whole giant C compiler that they built, could have security flaws built into it by default by a malicious actor, or if it brought in bad code accidentally that wasn't checked because one of the agents wasn't part of a secure network that followed a specific outlined process to develop its code, it would be a nightmare. So, these are big deals for people who are in that industry, and it's something to be very aware of, down the line as a cybersecurity expert. So then December, AWS enhances its Connect platform. Most of what they're doing here, I think, is really talking about the connection services and the integration services that allow you to connect agents to the big backend AI. Pretty good. And then NTT, which is Nippon Telecommunications, I think it is. It's a Japanese company. I know I don't have the acronym right, but they host things within AWS, and they're very much a cybersecurity oriented company, not a product developer product platform. They're more of a services, and they build things with other people's capabilities. There are other tools. So they joined into a collaboration to help improve that and modernize that. And then here out on the record, these are the CEOs of the companies, especially in the cybersecurity area. Amit Sinha, AI agents need verified identities, much like passports, so that enterprises can establish trust at every interaction. Pretty cool, pretty smart. We don't want AI out there unauthenticated, because if the AI is just rogue and causing problems for the world, and it can without authentication dive right into your stuff, bad news for the world, right? And Databricks, for 40 years, databases were designed under the assumption that a human administrator was in the loop. That's not going to be true when AI starts taking over these agentic workflows. And the large action models combined with orchestration, that's what I was talking about before, and governance allow AI to reason, plan, and safely execute work across systems. But go back to Amit's comment, it's only going to be able to safely execute work across systems if it has a good, tight authentication to make sure that you don't have rogue elements showing up in your workflow. So I know that that's very techno gobbledygook for a Saturday morning, and I hope that those of you listening aren't like grab your coffee for a little more stimulation, because it could be pretty boring. I apologize if it is, but some of these topics are really important for especially I come out of the cybersecurity industry, and a lot of people that I think will watch if they came in from LinkedIn are going to be coming from cybersecurity. Just jazzing up. And my show's going to go a little over the hour today because I have a couple more things that I want to talk about. But when I go down into the next set of items, we're going to go quickly through these. I'm not going to even bother bringing them up. Airbnb is saying a third of their customer support is now AI. My son, who may or may not be watching, but he's taking Coursera courses, and he's getting interactive AI simulations that he has to interact with an AI in order to pass, as a quiz, in order to pass an exam. Hugely phenomenal. I don't know that he would probably argue that it's annoying as hell. and I don't blame him, but all I'm saying is that it's pretty amazing that we developed into actually using AI for simulations in the actual training already, and pretty profoundly so in a positive way. So this, excuse me, sorry. What you're seeing here is a boat going under solar panels that is either put up over a river or over a lake or over a body of water of some kind. What they're saying is that this cools the water, or the panels are water cooled, improving their efficiency by 10 to 20%. It reduces some of the water evaporation and algae growth that occurs in reservoirs. And for reservoirs, that's a big deal because you're talking about drinking water, as opposed to just your general lakes and bodies of water. You don't want to put this up over just generic where you want livestock and things like that to interact with the water in the normal way. But in deserts, for example, one way to make sure that you actually can have water in the deserts is you put the solar panels up first, and then you flood the area with water, and the solar panels help make sure that the water doesn't instantly evaporate. And this is going to be a big deal because apparently they're going to partially flood part of the Sahara Desert. And if they put the solar panels up first, then you're not just evaporating a bunch of water and ending up with a salt bed in the middle of the desert, So pretty cool, interesting. Just an interesting topic to think about. There's been apparently a rather significant amount of battery storage deployed by Tesla. even though their EVs are a little slower in sales, which is, they got rid of the, what do you call that? The tax break for buying a Tesla. And that's cool because you don't need all taxpayers paying for Teslas. People who buy a car should pay for their car just like they, subsidies. That's what I was saying. And, if you buy a car, you pay for your car. That's all there is to it. But even though the sales slump occurred because of the subsidies going away, they had record Q4 earnings in battery storage deployed for grid support, which means fewer brownouts, fewer blackouts, less likelihood that you're, choking in the middle of summer without air conditioning or freezing in the middle of winter because your power went out. So that's a good thing. And then, so this is another one of those weird technologies that you would look at and go, so what? But it's a big deal. 3D printed materials are actually now able to get to pixel level resolution and in the process print solid to transparent so you can see through the model. Now, I don't think you're going to 3D print, you might, I don't know, but I don't think you're going to 3D print materials around human bones, but you might, but you probably would 3D print something around exoskeletons, which means going back to those earlier pictures of Optimus and robots and whatnot, you could definitely do something like that. Now they're using this probably for anatomical training in medical conditions or medical circumstances. But I think that this is there's a lot of practical applications for this that we can't just see it right off the bat, but you can see through it. And then this is another one going back to the exoskeleton thing. It's what they were calling. I'm going to skip looking for pictures on this one. They don't have any, but it's replacement of a portable hip. Now, hip replacement is an intrusive, they basically almost cut your leg off in a way in order to put a hip in or put a knee in, same thing. When I got my knee replaced, they cut off the top of my bones on the lower leg and the bottom of the bones on my upper leg to replace it with metallic implants. And then they put the actuator mechanisms in between and bind it together so that the whole thing works. But essentially, they opened the body up and there's like all of the ligaments and tendons are gone that hold all that together. Now it's mechanical. So it's an extraordinarily intrusive surgery. And, the same thing goes for hip surgeries. When do you get these surgeries? When you're older, when you are more likely to experience a stroke, which means a major surgery is likely to cause a stroke. So you could get your hip replaced, great. And now you're partially paralyzed, right? So if you could avoid the intrusive surgery by having an external exoskeleton that takes the burden off of your hip joint so that you could potentially heal and get some of those new cartilage replacement technologies that they're doing and maybe even the osteoarthritis injections that are also supposed to be helpful. If you could take that burden off of the joint while you'd let it heal for something else and not have to cut into a person's body, you could make the survivorship of those surgeries go up, and also the outcomes of these alternative medicines to reconstruct the inside of your joints be that much better. So super hopeful stuff that is coming out of all of this stuff. So that's it for my prepared areas. Now I've got an interesting topic that I want to talk about. And this is a brand new book that just came out. If you haven't heard about it, Farzad, if you don't see him over on LinkedIn or on, what do you call it? And I, by the way, sorry for those of you who are on the Locals platform, we're still at the 30-minute cutoff. So, I'm glad to see some of you jumped over to YouTube. A lot more people watch this recorded than they do live, which is totally fine with me. But I want to go into this, which is Farzad is a regular streamer. He's been monitoring and learning about AI, robotics, and he used to work for Tesla. And he's built his own show outside of his work at Tesla. And it's a very popular show. I tune into it quite often. And, props to him as he's doing an incredible job, I think. And I'm kind of modeling even some of what I'm doing off of what he's doing. Maybe someday I'll make as much money as he does so that I can buy a Cybertruck and stream from my Cybertruck like he does. I'd love to do that, but I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. Maybe, you never know. But anyways, this book just came out. It came out today. Now, I haven't read it, but I want to take advantage of this wonderful thing called AI, which is exactly what he's talking about, and talk about his book. So this is a breakdown of a summary of the book. So I got AI to give me a summary of the book, and then I put it into Notepad LM, and then I asked it to build me a mind map of the content in the book. So we're going to go through that real quick, and it won't take long because I don't have enough depth on each chapter. I'll come back to this and probably talk a little more about some of the chapters as time goes on. But I just wanted to introduce this quick, and I don't want to spend all day streaming here, and instead just have a kind of a tight stream and be done by maybe 20 minutes past or so, which is 10 minutes from now. So hopefully we'll be done quick. Anyways, the abundance or collapse, the civilizational fork. This is where we are. That's what he's representing. That's why that tree image is there. It's two different sides. One is AI taking us into a golden age, or AI bringing us into a societal collapse, both of which are entirely possible. So the central thesis of the book is there is a fork in a road, and we're either going to have unprecedented prosperity and abundance, or we're going to have potential societal breakdown. I think we're going to have both. Right? There's going to be elements of society that break down, and nothing can be done about that. It is true. It's just whatever happens, we're going to have. There's always somebody that's going to not like or not embrace the future based on what's happening and say, "I hate this and I don't want to be part of it." It's normal. Can't help it. And I wish that there was more to say on that, but it is what it is. It's life. But that happens every single time we have new technologies coming in. The only thing that's so profound is that this technology is so exponential in its scope that it could really make a massive difference to where the world is in 5 to 10 years. Now, ultimately, in the current situation, it is an inevitable technology, true. It's already so far down the path, it's self-replicating to a degree. So it's coming, and it's not going to be something we don't have an option to back out, but there is a response window for us to maybe shape where it's going. And I think that's probably from a theme perspective of the book. When I read it, I'll know, but I'm not sure yet. But my sense is that he's going to be talking a lot about how that comes about. Now, the convergence flywheel, what we just went through today, all of the stuff that we talked about between the bioengineering, the exoskeletons, the 3D printing for a variety of different technologies, AI, robotics, you see it all coming together. It's all happening at the same time. Now, the big area that we need more than anything to make all of this happen is energy abundance. When that really, and again, going to the Tesla batteries supplementing the grid, if we get enough batteries on the grid, based on the way that our grid operates, without having to upgrade the entire grid, we should be able to double its output, because the 50% of time that is considered downtime right now goes into the ether. There's nothing recording it, if you will. The batteries become the recorder, so that the power can be generated and recorded or captured by the batteries. And then when they spin down the generators for whatever purpose, the batteries offset the grid. And so you get double the output for half the effort. And on top of that, you could do your power generation. You use real mainline power during the day when you need the heating, cooling, and for AC units around the world. During prime time when people actually have that stuff on. And then when they turn it off, you keep the generators running where you would normally spin the capacity down and for its output because nobody's consuming the electricity at night. Well, instead, you charge the batteries during the day. So it's the energy abundance is going to hit us pretty profoundly. The only drag on that is the data center drag. And if Elon gets his way and we start putting data centers in space, which I believe will absolutely happen, then the grid will not be like the sponge of the grid will not be the data centers. They'll be us, just the humans that need electricity. And then AI and robotics, pretty clear. We already know where that's going. The robotics will increase the capacity of productivity across the world along with AI so that systems can build things so cheap that instead of what you buy today costing you, think about how much money we spend at the grocery store just for food. And if the food production costs go dramatically down, transportation costs to get that from the farm to the table go dramatically down, and you can cut out a lot of the middlemen because you can go directly, truly, from farm to table, and you can have your robot at home prepare the food for you, restaurant quality. You end up with almost, as it says here, near zero marginal cost for survival. And that's, the ideal, that's the hope of what all of this is hopefully bringing us. And then that exponential productivity, everybody has this mental block about if I'm not buying something, then why would they produce the stuff that I'm not even going to buy, right? And what we as human beings, when I first got into sales, my very first experience with selling a large ticket item like a $50,000 sale, in the back of my head, I couldn't imagine anybody spending more than $5,000 for anything because I had personally never spent more than $5,000 on anything in my entire life. And then I bought a house, and then it became, okay, I could see anything up to $150,000, then $300,000, then $500,000 because I had spent that money, or was part of a finance to do something like that. So it was a mind shift for me to linearly grow what I thought I could actually sell to a person when I was selling things and how much money I could ask for it. But in reality, it didn't really hit me in sales until I did like a $250,000 or even $1 million deal that companies buy huge things that we don't buy. And that's where we get hung up. We can only conceive of what we know. So we all get hung up on, I don't see how the economy can handle all of these things. But then these companies buy, the largest deal I've ever done in business was helping to sell a security system to Saudi Aramco for $50 million. $50 million. Now imagine the productivity gains. We ended up, that deal took 3 or 4 years, and then to actually deliver it was 12 years. The return on investment was horrible and couldn't be otherwise because of the time frame. It was, it's a massive infrastructure project. Now imagine for a second that your infrastructure project for a new nuclear power plant or a new gas power plant is exponentially cheaper, faster, can be done in months instead of years, and delivered with the highest safety because it's being, the design goes straight into production because of all of these things like the 3D printing, the robots, all of that. So the productivity gains that they're talking about are outside of the consumer stuff that we think about intrinsically and natively as human beings. So it's actually possible to create a massive economy that goes so much farther and so much bigger than what we can conceive of in our own experience. So there's a potential for an economy that is exponentially larger than what we have today. And because it's exponentially larger, it's exponentially cheaper to live in, because all of the goods and services are so cheap that we can get them dirt cheap. But we have to wait until that happens and survive until that happens. And that's really the number one thing. Now, the barbell effect, I'm not even going to try and explain this one, because quite honestly, I had a lot of what he has in his book. I'm versed in enough from other books that I've read or other topics that I've dug into that I can talk about it. But I don't want to try and do this one. I saw him do a video on this. It's better to get it right from the horse's mouth than from me. So I'm going to leave that one alone. But the economic redesign, absolutely true. Now, there are a couple of other books that I highly encourage if you have interest in this topic. There's a book called The Unincorporated Man, science fiction, and just the first couple of chapters of that book talks about how human beings become corporations in and of themselves. And the reason being is that you would sell shares of yourself back into the market in order to pay for things like an education, child rearing, all of the stuff. Your parents get like 20% of you as a primary investment, which incentivizes them to raise you well. Because if they raise you well, then what you end up with is a productive child that in turn pays for their retirement, right? That 20%. Because everything that the child does feeds back into the parents' income stream over time. And then the government gets 5%, which the government in this story is miraculously small. There's no parties like Republicans or whatever, Republicans and Democrats. That's all gone, and it's replaced by a governance structure that allows this corporate environment to exist. And then you, as an individual, get the remaining 75%, and you would sell shares of yourself so that you could get an education, a high-level education, and hopefully, as you go out there in the world, contribute to society and bring wealth back to yourself, because your shares value goes up because of what you contributed. So it's a unique idea, but it's also, the premise of the book is that it's also a form of slavery, which when you really look at it, it does become that, because all of your shareholders are corporations, and if they don't like what you're doing, the story says they could ship you off to work the mines of the Oort cloud, which is out in the fringe of the galaxy, or fringe of our solar system, or you could be pushed to work on Mars or the moon, wherever they want you to go, and you have no choice because they own 70% of your 60% of your shares or something. So what that does is it takes away the human self-direction. And I came up with an article that's posted on my LinkedIn profile and also on my X profile, which is the incorporated robot. So basically, we take this agentic AI that's in the robot. The robot tutors the child as part of this corporate structure in the early stages. And then, that's its mission in the beginning, is to help educate the child and raise the child with the parents' help. And then after the child reaches majority, 18, 21, whatever that is, the child now becomes the owner of the robot. And the robot now does what the child says. And the child is now an adult. So the adult owns the robot, and the robot is the one that's broken down into shares in terms of whatever it's used for, its earning capacity. So the idea here in my story is that the government issues the robot, gets the 5% shares, the same concept as the incorporated man, and gets like a percentage of income from the parents as an offset to the child rearing. Whether it comes from the parents or goes to the parents, I don't know which. But then the child is raised partially by this robot. The parents, or the child is self-directing through understanding their urges and desires, what their aptitudes are, and what their interests are. And the AI gives them the one-on-one mentoring that people never get, and allows them to reach a high level of mastery, making them incredibly productive in the world, in whatever they want to pursue. And then that allows the robots then to be under the direction of that human being, and all of that education now gets used, and the robot is the execution, the tool that actually allows the child or the adult at that point to execute. And the shares owned by, the ownership of the shares of the robot, 75% goes back to the child. So the dividends that get paid out from the work done by the robot after the child reaches majority, then in turn pays back the child. And the child could potentially buy more robots and grow a business out of that, and develop his or her own empire, if you will, tiny little empire of business. So anyways, it's just an idea I have. And I'm thinking in terms of the economic redesign, that could be one way that we do it. And then the mass wealth transfer, we know for a fact that always happens. So what we want to do, though, is make sure that the mass wealth transfer is not going from us to the corporations, but from the corporations to us. Or we can tap into that GDP as individuals and actually pull some of that income to us instead of the other way around. And then, I know I said I'd be done by now, but I'm going a little longer than I intended because I can't stop talking. I'm just a talker. Sorry. Now, critical window, 2 to 5 years from now. That is our window for all of this stuff happening. Early adopters, people like me, people like you, perhaps, are going to be on the leading edge of what's going on. The ownership of the tech and energy that's out there, I doubt we're going to have ownership of the grid per se, but at least you could potentially have, if you own a home or if you own a piece of property, you could potentially have, some level of energy generation through solar and batteries on your own property. So yes, that can be part of it. Career repositioning. I just gave you an example of how I could see that career repositioning working, where basically, in the beginning, you're trained by the AI and by the robots that are in your life. And then you become so proficient at whatever you're doing that you can then deploy those robots or AI as your agents into the world and help you to make a living off of that. So imagine just for a second, you buy 5 AI robots, you take over a McDonald's franchise and you put those AI robots into the McDonald's in the back, not where the people, you want to have people working out front perhaps, but you have everything in the back done by robots. And that just makes everything super efficient. Everything is working as efficiently as possible. And your revenue for running a franchise goes massively higher because you're able to deploy robots in your own franchise, things like that. So I see that as it doesn't have to be doom and gloom. We do not have to look at our world today and see only we're going to lose jobs, everything's going to go to heck. We can do much better than that. And then policy advocacy. Take the concepts that I'm talking about here, read this book, read other books around AI, get to understand it. If you're interested in that, try to, if you can get in, generate that level of curiosity, and then use what you have learned to talk to your congressmen, your representatives, to influence the policies that allow the best possible outcome. We don't know, every single policy has unforeseen outcomes that we can't predict, but we can, the more we can shape the policies and tune them in real time, it allows us to get outcomes that are positive for the world. So that kind of policy advocacy, I'm not sure if that's what he talks about in the book, but that's how I think of it. And then finally, the risks and challenges, and this is logical. If the AI and robotics exclusively stay in the hands of only the top and most wealthy, and they don't care about us at all? And how can that happen? You know, people probably care. Like, I would say Jeff Bezos, Elon, Bill Gates, all of the big guys and gals that are out there running the world, as it were. I don't think they have bad intentions at all. I don't think any of them are, you know, in the background trying to plot the downfall of all of us. I think that the corporations, which are non-human entities that are not built to be optimized to take care of human beings, they are the ones that are unstable. They are the ones that operate on algorithms that are inhuman and not human supporting. So there's Brian Romelli, you may have heard me talk about him a couple of times. He's created this thing called the love equation, and the concept behind that is the prospect of the feeling love, not sexual love or anything like that. But the idea behind it is that equation talks about collaboration and coming together to work on things together, and thinking, you know, being somewhat altruistic in your perspective so that it's not all gimme, gimme, gimme. And in doing so, if we can build those kind of algorithms right into our corporate culture first, then the extreme inequality that we're talking about here may not happen. The current circumstances, if corporations are continuing to just squeeze every tiny penny out of every single thing that's happening, and we don't think about the human beings in the machine or on the receiving end of the dividends that go out for the profit of the company, or that don't get delivered because they get kept by a greedy owner, that is likely to happen. The extreme inequality is if we don't do something about corporate governance the way it is today. And I'm not, I very much believe in positive corporate governance, where we talk about changing it is the underlying operating system of a corporation in a way that does include some kind of a love equation, the way Brian Romelli talks, as opposed to the greed algorithm that it's built on today. And again, I really don't think these are character traits of individuals, except in that the corporation rewards that kind of greedy personality trait. And because it rewards that, we end up with that behavior being propagated in those corporations. And it's human beings are going to optimize for whatever they can for survival. And if my survival is dependent on me saying, I'll take that deal, even if it's ethically not perfect, because, you know, in sales, that does happen. It happens all the time. That's not going to change. That is, you've got to change the operating system of corporations, and the operating system is governance. So it's not always about the leaders. And where this comes into play right now, Sam Altman at OpenAI is talking about how he could potentially have himself replaced as CEO of OpenAI so that the AI can follow a more rules-based oriented structure and less driven off of human instincts like greed or fear, which could potentially bring us to a world where this extreme inequality and institutional failure doesn't happen. And instead of having a scarcity mindset, we can build right into that algorithm, right into the governance, right into the corporate infrastructure, a non-scarcity mindset, but an abundance mindset that allows that corporation to be prolific and also take care of the people who work for it and the people that it affects out there in the world. And then, you know, the big concern is systemic instability. We already have massive scarcity mindsets, institutional failure, extreme inequality, and systemic instability. Bringing AI with that love equation into the fold, changing the operating system of corporate infrastructure so that the corporate operating system is not greed and fear as much as interoperability and promotion of not only the people who work for the corporation, but benefiting the societies that it's supporting. I think it really does have a really bright future potential, and the potential for us to live in what realistically could be considered a golden age. So, and that's again where I see this what this image represents is we could have a golden age, which is what the gold side of this tree represents, or we could have systemic failure and breakdown. We're at the fork in the road, and we can make that choice now. So it's up to us to kind of step in, do things like I'm doing here today, trying to share information that hopefully is a little more optimistic, a little more leaning towards the golden age, and a little less on the derogatory cesspool that our social medias are becoming and dragging our society down. So you can choose which path on the fork in the road you want to walk on. I'm going left in this one. I'm going to the golden age. I'm not heading towards the collapse. So that said, I'm done with all of the prepared materials that I have for you today, and I hope that you have a fantastic day. I hope it wasn't terrible that I went a little long, and I hope that you have a wonderful day going forward. Talk to you next time. See you soon.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe for more Insights. And click the bell for notifications. See you in the next one.